Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. My friend, I'll call her Rachel, worked at a digital marketing agency in Ontario, Canada. It was a small owner-operated business with the owner and 3 employees, including my friend. Everyone worked Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. One of Rachel's co-workers, I'll call her Margaret, a woman in her early 60s, was a constant source of workplace drama. She had mastered the art of taking unauthorized time off beyond her allocated vacation days. To compensate for these absences, she would claim overtime by allegedly coming to the office during off hours to catch up on work, though no one had asked her to do so. "I just need to finish up some reports," she would say, waving a stack of papers. "It'll only take a few hours." The owner would sigh. "Margaret, we've discussed this before. Overtime needs to be approved." Despite catching Margaret in numerous falsehoods and warning her about unauthorized overtime claims, the owner hesitated to take disciplinary action. She had learned after hiring Margaret that she'd been fired from her previous position at another local marketing agency for similar behavior. However, Margaret had successfully sued her former employer for wrongful termination and won a settlement. In 2022, after Rachel had worked at the agency for several years, the owner decided to retire and offered to sell the business to her. Rachel accepted the deal and retained both Margaret and the other employee, Lisa. Like the previous owner, Rachel feared legal repercussions if she terminated Margaret's employment. Upon taking over, Rachel implemented strict policies regarding time off and established a firm no overtime rule. Margaret's schemes became less successful under Rachel's leadership, but she still had one trick left. Rachel, a divorced mother of 2 girls involved in competitive swimming, would occasionally leave early to drive her daughters to practice or meets. Margaret would wait for these absences to book time off without facing immediate rejection. "Where's Margaret?" Rachel would ask the next morning. Lisa would shrug and say, "She left a note saying she's taking today off." Rachel usually didn't make an issue of these incidents since the no overtime policy meant Margaret couldn't claim compensatory time. She either lost a day's pay or used her vacation days. Plus, 2 people could typically handle the daily workload efficiently. However, things came to a head in March 2024 when Rachel planned to attend her daughter's swimming championship. She explicitly told both employees they couldn't take time off during her absence. "I need both of you here those days," Rachel emphasized during a staff meeting. "The end of March is always busy for us." "Of course," Margaret nodded. "Not a problem at all." A few days later, while working on Saturday, Rachel discovered Margaret had booked a trip to Vancouver for her daughter and son-in-law, plus a ticket to Edmonton for herself, all coinciding with Rachel's planned absence. She'd also marked those days as vacation time on the calendar. Rachel sent an email. "Margaret, I notice you've requested time off for March 28th, 29. As discussed, these dates are unavailable due to my absence." Margaret's response was swift. "My daughter's having emergency dental surgery. I need to help with my granddaughter. It's unavoidable." Rachel replied, "I'm aware of the Vancouver trip you booked for your daughter and son-in-law, and your flight to Edmonton. The time off request is denied." "I've given this company 10 years of dedicated service," Margaret wrote back, completely ignoring being caught in her lie. "If I'm not valued here, I have no choice but to retire. Consider this my 2 weeks' notice." Rachel consulted her accountant, who advised this was the perfect opportunity to resolve the Margaret situation legally, as everything was documented in writing. The following Monday, Rachel arrived early with her partner Mark as a witness. She packed Margaret's personal items and secured the company's client database cards that Margaret had stubbornly kept in paper format. When Margaret walked in at 8:55, she cheerfully called out, "Good morning, everyone!" Rachel stepped forward. "Margaret, I've accepted your retirement notice. Here's your final paycheck, including 2 weeks' salary in lieu of notice." Margaret froze. "What? But I didn't retire. I'm not ready to retire." "Your email clearly stated your intention to retire," Rachel said firmly. "This is ridiculous. Lisa, you know I didn't mean to retire," Margaret appealed to her coworker. Lisa kept her eyes on her computer screen. "I think you should listen to Rachel, Margaret." When Margaret spotted her box of belongings minus the client cards, she demanded, "Where are my cards? Those are mine." "They contain confidential client information and belong to the company," Rachel explained. Margaret refused to leave without the cards, leading Rachel to call the police. When officers arrived, they quickly assessed the situation and escorted Margaret out with her personal belongings. The next day, Rachel displayed a sign in the office window. "Congratulations to Margaret on her retirement after 10 years of service." She also placed a similar announcement in the local paper. The final touch was checking retired on government employment forms, effectively preventing Margaret from claiming unemployment benefits. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never expected to find myself in the middle of a neighborhood drama, but life has a funny way of throwing curveballs at you. This all started when my nephew Jake, 25, needed a place to stay after finishing grad school. I'm his Aunt Sarah, 42, and I own a nice 4-bedroom house in a relatively upscale suburban neighborhood in Connecticut. I bought this house about 10 years ago when property values were lower thanks to smart investments and a successful career in software development. I live alone since my divorce 5 years ago, so I had plenty of space. When Jake called me explaining his situation, struggling with student loans and needing time to find a job in his field, I didn't hesitate to offer him one of my spare rooms. Jake moved in last March and everything was going great. He's a quiet, responsible young man who keeps to himself, helps with house maintenance, and even cooks dinner sometimes. He landed a remote position with a tech startup and was slowly building his savings while contributing to utilities and groceries. I enjoyed having him around. It made the house feel less empty. Enter Karen Thompson, my next-door neighbor who moved in about 6 months ago. From day one, she appointed herself as the unofficial neighborhood watch coordinator and made it her mission to know everyone's business. She's in her mid-50s, with that signature highlighted bob haircut and an air of superiority that could suffocate you from 20 feet away. The first incident happened in July. I was at work when Jake called me, sounding confused and frustrated. Aunt Sarah, the neighbor lady, just came over demanding to see my rental agreement and threatening to call the police because she says I'm living here illegally, he said. I felt my blood pressure rising immediately. What? Karen came to my house making demands? Yeah, she said she's on the homeowner association board and needs to verify all renters in the neighborhood. She insisted that single-family homes can't be rented out to multiple unrelated tenants. I took a deep breath. First of all, I'm not even renting to you. You're my nephew staying in my home. Second, I've owned this house for 10 years, and we don't even have a homeowner association. Did you tell her that? I tried, but she wouldn't listen. She kept saying she's going to report me for unauthorized occupancy or something. Don't worry about it. I'll handle Karen. That evening, I marched over to Karen's house and rang her doorbell. She opened the door with that fake sweet smile that makes your skin crawl. Oh, hello, Sarah. I was just about to come talk to you about your tenant situation. I cut her off immediately. Karen, let me make something very clear. That young man is my nephew, and he's staying in my house that I own. We don't have a homeowner association here, and you have absolutely no authority to demand anything from him or me. Her face turned red. Well, I've been receiving complaints about a strange young man living in your house. As a concerned neighbor? Concerned about what exactly? Jake works from home, keeps to himself, and hasn't caused any problems. And who exactly is complaining? Because I've talked to our other neighbors, and they all like Jake. That's not the point, Karen sputtered. There are rules about these things. Property values to consider. What if he's dealing drugs or running some kind of illegal business? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you seriously suggesting my nephew is a criminal based on absolutely nothing? Because that sounds like defamation to me, Karen. I'd be very careful about spreading those kinds of accusations. I'm just trying to protect our neighborhood, she insisted. No, you're harassing my family member and making false claims. This is your only warning. Stay away from Jake and stop making up lies about him, or we're going to have serious problems. I turned and walked away as she stood there fuming. I thought that would be the end of it, but Karen was just getting started. Over the next few weeks, she began a campaign of harassment. She would take photos whenever Jake came and went from the house. She called the police twice, reporting suspicious activity, which amounted to Jake working on his laptop in our backyard or having a friend over to watch football. The police were apologetic and quickly realized Karen was wasting their time. Then she started posting on the neighborhood Facebook group, making vague but pointed comments about unauthorized residents and security concerns. When other neighbors defended Jake and me in the comments, she doubled down and claimed she had evidence of illegal activities. The situation reached a breaking point in September. I came home from work to find Jake looking worried. Aunt Sarah, you need to see this, he said, handing me an official-looking letter. It was a notice claiming to be from a property management company, stating that I had violated my lease agreement by allowing unauthorized occupants and demanding that Jake vacate the premises within 30 days or face eviction proceedings. What the actual hell? I examined the letter closely. The company name looked legitimate, but something felt off. I pulled out my phone and did a quick search. This is a fake, I said after a few minutes. This company exists, but their logo is slightly different, and they don't even operate in our state. Someone created this to look official. Karen, Jake asked. Who else? She's really crossed the line now. Creating fake legal documents is criminal harassment. I called my lawyer immediately and explained the situation. He confirmed that fabricating eviction notices is illegal and could result in serious consequences. He helped me prepare a cease and desist letter detailing all of Karen's harassment and threatening legal action if she didn't stop immediately. The next morning, I woke up to absolute chaos. Karen had called code enforcement, the police, and a local news tip line, claiming my house was an illegal boarding house with dangerous criminal elements. She'd apparently spent the night calling every authority figure she could think of. 2 police officers, a code enforcement inspector, and even a local news van were parked outside my house at 7 a.m. I stepped out in my robe, coffee in hand, ready to deal with this nonsense once and for all. "Good morning, officers," I said calmly. "I see my neighbor Karen has been busy." One of the officers, a seasoned-looking sergeant named Rodriguez, approached me. "Ma'am, we've received multiple complaints about illegal occupancy and suspicious activities at this address." I noticed Karen standing in her driveway, poorly hiding her smug satisfaction behind her morning coffee cup. "Let me save everyone some time," I said. I went inside and returned with a folder containing my house deed, tax records, and other documentation. "I'm Sarah Mitchell, the owner of this house. That young man is my nephew Jake, who's staying with me while establishing his career. Here's all the documentation proving ownership and residency." The code enforcement inspector, Mr. Williams, reviewed my paperwork. "Everything appears to be in order, Miss Mitchell. Single-family home, owner-occupied, no zoning violations." Karen suddenly appeared beside us, waving her phone. "But I have proof! I have photos of different cars visiting, people coming and going at odd hours." "You mean when my nephew's college friends visited to watch the NFL playoffs?" I interrupted. "Or when I hosted my book club last month. Karen, you've been photographing my house and my family member without consent, creating fake eviction notices and harassing us for months." The officer's attention shifted to Karen. "Ma'am, did you say you created fake eviction notices?" Sergeant Rodriguez asked sharply. Karen's face went pale. I was just trying to protect our neighborhood. He could be anyone. Running a drug operation, or my nephew works remotely as a software developer," I said, pulling out Jake's employment verification letter, "which you'd know if you'd ever had a normal conversation with him instead of stalking him and making up wild accusations." The news reporter, who'd been quietly observing, stepped forward with her microphone. "Miss Thompson, would you like to comment on these allegations of harassment and creating fraudulent legal documents?" Karen's demeanor changed instantly. "Turn that camera off. This is a private matter." She started backing away toward her house. "Actually," I said, "since you involved the media, let's talk about everything. The false police reports, the defamatory social media posts, the unauthorized surveillance." I turned to the reporter. "I have documentation of all of it, including security camera footage of her trespassing on my property to deliver fake legal notices." That's when Jake came outside, dressed professionally for his remote workday. "Officers, I'd also like to file a harassment complaint. I have screenshots of Mrs. Thompson telling other neighbors I'm running a drug operation, which has affected my reputation and caused me significant distress." Karen fled into her house, slamming the door. The officers followed to have a word with her while Mr. Williams apologized for the unnecessary inspection. The reporter, Sarah Chen from Channel 8 News, was thrilled. "Would you be willing to do an interview about neighborhood harassment and false reporting? We've been covering a series of similar incidents in suburban communities." I agreed, and over the next hour, Jake and I gave a comprehensive interview about Karen's months-long campaign of harassment. We showed them the fake eviction notice, the security footage, and the social media posts. I explained how Karen had weaponized local authorities and abused reporting systems to try to force out a legitimate resident she simply didn't like. The story aired that evening. Local woman faces legal troubles after campaign of harassment against homeowner and nephew. The segment included interviews with other neighbors who praised Jake as a quiet, respectful resident and condemned Karen's behavior. But the real fallout was just beginning. The police charged Karen with harassment, filing false reports, and creating fraudulent legal documents. My lawyer filed a civil suit for defamation and emotional distress. The property management company, whose letterhead she'd forged, also pursued legal action. Karen's husband Tom, who traveled frequently for work and had been oblivious to her behavior, finally returned home to find his wife facing multiple legal issues. I overheard their argument through their open windows. "What were you thinking, Karen? We could lose everything over this," Tom shouted. "I was protecting our property values. That young man is a software developer staying with his aunt. Our neighbors all like him. You're the one who's destroyed our property value. Who's going to want to live next to someone known for harassing their neighbors?" The next day, Tom came over to apologize profusely. I'm so sorry for everything my wife has done. We'll be paying for her to get counseling, and we'll cover any legal fees and damages. She's clearly developed some unhealthy obsessions since retiring. I appreciate that, Tom, I replied, but this went far beyond normal neighbor disputes. She tried to have my nephew forcibly removed from his home and accused him of being a drug dealer. That affected his reputation and mental well-being. I understand completely, Tom said, looking defeated. We'll make this right, whatever it takes. The legal proceedings took several months. Karen ended up with a harassment conviction, had to pay significant damages to both Jake and me, and was ordered to attend counseling and perform community service. She was also banned from posting on neighborhood social media platforms. The incident had an unexpected positive outcome for Jake. A tech company executive saw the news story and was impressed by Jake's professional handling of the situation. He reached out with a job offer that came with a significant salary increase. While Jake was now earning enough to afford his own place, he decided to stay with me a bit longer. We'd grown closer through the ordeal, and I enjoyed having him around. As for Karen and Tom, they put their house on the market 3 months later. The story had gone viral locally, and Karen couldn't show her face at the grocery store without people recognizing her as the housing Karen from the news. They sold at a loss and moved to Florida. The day they moved out, several neighbors organized an impromptu street party. Everyone brought food and drinks, and we all celebrated the return of peace to our neighborhood. Jake grilled his famous burgers, and I made my signature potato salad. As I looked around at my neighbors, chatting, laughing, and enjoying each other's company, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. Karen's attempt to protect the neighborhood had actually brought our community closer together. The following week, our new neighbors moved in, a lovely retired couple who immediately invited everyone over for coffee and cookies. When they asked about the neighborhood, someone started to mention the Karen incident, but I stopped them. Let's just say we learned that good neighbors respect boundaries, mind their own business, and support each other, I said. Welcome to the neighborhood. Jake, who was helping them unload moving boxes, added, and if you ever need any tech support, I'm right next door. We all laughed, and life went on. Sometimes I see Karen's story shared in various entitled people forums online, usually with titles like, Karen tries to evict homeowner's nephew, gets served justice instead. It serves as a reminder that sometimes standing up to bullies isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about showing others that they can't get away with harassing innocent people. Jake eventually did move out last month, having saved enough for a down payment on his own house just a few blocks away. But he still comes over for Sunday dinners, and we laugh about the time a neighbor tried to evict him from his aunt's house. The whole incident taught us both valuable lessons about standing up for what's right and the importance of documenting everything when dealing with difficult people. As for me, I installed a better security system and cameras, just in case any future neighbors get any ideas. But mostly, I'm grateful for how everything turned out. Sometimes it takes a Karen to bring out the best in a community, even if that wasn't her intention at all. The next one is a petty revenge story. I'm on my way driving home from town, and I take the dual carriageway. I'm in the second lane, and I'm gaining on the guy in front of me who's not quite doing the speed limit. He also isn't overtaking anyone, he's just sat there holding me up along with the line of cars behind me. I can't move over and undertake him as there's another car beside me, so we're basically stuck with him until we reach the end of the long dual carriageway. Approaching the roundabout at the end, the guy now decides to move over at the last minute. He had the whole dual carriageway to make that move, but he chooses to do it now. Great. Thanks. I suppose this is fine though, as both of these lanes lead to the exit I'm looking to take, and now I can overtake him on the roundabout. He's probably taking the first exit, and I'll take the second. As I come alongside him, his indicator comes on. He's changed his mind. He wants to come back into my lane and go in entirely the opposite direction. Not today, mate. I'm committed to taking this lane to my exit, and he's forced to come with me. I floor it out of the roundabout as the two lanes now merge into one. He's floored it too, hoping to undertake me and give me what for. Instead, I merge just in front of him, and he's ranting and raving in my rearview mirror. Nice. The next road we're on goes on for about a mile to the next village, and he's right up my backside the entire way. Entering the village, he takes the next turn off, going in the direction he'd meant to have been going at the roundabout. This detour will cost him at least 5 minutes, maybe 10. I had a little laugh and a silly little grin the whole way home. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Got my first career job in a local government, keeping tabs on its real estate and the legal documents relating to said real estate. I'm wet behind the ears, my first 40-hour-per-week career job. This was a time when multitasking was a huge buzzword in business, and it seemed every single job I applied for required someone with good multitasking skills. I thought it was bullcrap. I worked best when only working on one task at a time and managing my workload via a daily time allotment schedule. That is, I'd schedule my work in 15-minute lumps when I got in the morning and work on those tasks. That way, I never missed a deadline or had a project fall between the cracks. For example, some tasks got slotted 2 hours, some whole days, some just 15 minutes. I love to keep my desk clean. All tasks that appeared in my physical inbox were sorted and prioritized. The paperwork was then filed and the task scheduled for later that day or later in the week depending on how urgent it was. Consequently, my desk was always empty, save one folder and a few maps related to the folder. Once one task was done, that folder and its maps were filed, a new folder and its maps were retrieved. One afternoon, my direct boss walks in, looks at my desk with its one folder and two maps, looks at my clean-topped filing cabinets, looks at my empty inbox, physical one you actually put paper folders in, grunts, walks out. 20 minutes later, my boss strides back into my office, drops 18 inches of folders and papers onto my inbox, states proudly and firmly, "It doesn't look like you have enough to do. This should keep you busy." He smiled and strutted back to his cluttered office. It was busy work. 3 weeks of mind-numbing paperwork, nothing outside of my work description. Just more like duplicate files, old contracts, unorganized paperwork, and/or outdated maps. In dealing with the dump's aftermath, I learned my lesson. While doing my actual job was important, it was equally important that hard work appear to be happening so I could do my actual job. I started saving old files, old maps, and old legal documents. I rebound up papers that normally would have been recycled into legitimate-looking folders. I transformed my office into a duplicate of my boss's chaotic file and paper hellscape. My inbox always had papers and folders in it. Height and number would vary, daily. Never empty. I had folders piled on top of the file cabinets, folders in stacks on the floor, 24 of those white office boxes packed with files towering around my work area. I even had a map rack with old maps rolled up in it. My office looked utterly cluttered. I even took to walking everywhere with a steno pad, a file folder, and sometimes a map under my arm. Didn't matter where. Getting coffee? Pad and file. Pooping? Pad and file. Pointless meeting? Pad. 2 files. Actual necessary and productive meeting, pad, relevant file, relevant map. Every morning, right after scheduling my real work, I would shuffle the fake folders and paper around my desk and work area, move the boxes about every 2 weeks. But in all that visual chaos, I kept one area of my desk clean, where the real work happened. One day, my boss peeked into my office, the door bumping into a stack of 3 full white boxes placed behind it, preventing it from fully opening. A single file fell off the top, spilling its guts all over the floor. He looked around, paused at the mess he just made, then, sorry about that. What you working on?" I rattled off 3 of the highest priority properties on the current week's schedule and the tasks for each. "All right, I'll give this to someone else," and walked on down the hall. I'd already completed those tasks. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.